Welcome back to Practical Prophecy. This will begin a series, The War on the Saints. This will be the first episode in this series, The Battlefield. The book of Revelation is a book which tells us about the end of time. It's full of symbols and analogies, and it's very open to interpretation. The 13th chapter of this book tells us about an authority. And one of the facts in this book about this entity, despite all the symbolism and analogy, is that this entity is comprised of several different entities. And these several different entities have a unified mission and a unified goal. And it also tells us that this entity is so powerful that it takes control over every single country, and it has control over every single person in the world. The leaders are also unified in their opinions and in their missions. And in this book, this authority is symbolized as the beast. There is another fact about this entity. It is extremely cunning, and it is very deceptive. In fact, it's so deceptive that it deceives the entire world. Since this is so deceptive, perhaps the agreement, the unified mission, is something that's unbeknownst to the population. Perhaps it's some sort of a secret agreement. Revelation 13:7 says, "The beast was allowed to wage war against God's holy people." A war is a struggle or competition between opposing forces or for a particular end. So the third fact that we know about this entity is it has global authority, or we'll say global governance. And another fact about this entity is it is opposed to Christians. So this global unified mission is something that's normally seen as a prediction of what's coming in the future, something that's going to happen eventually. However, I want to let you know today, this global governance is upon us. It is here. And this war against Christians is being waged as we speak. So it's no longer something in the future. I chose to speak about the battlefield before I speak about the weapons or the enemy, because if we have a full understanding of the battlefield, we'll be able to recognize the enemy for who or what it truly is. We'll be able to see its deceit a little better with a greater understanding of this battlefield. We'll be able to see his weapons and his tactics. This war has been declared. So what does this war look like? One of Jesus' many famous statements, which is usually taken out of context, is, "The truth will set you free." Now, the truth sometimes is a hard pill to swallow. Philippians 4:8 tells us, "Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable." In other words, be positive. Don't be negative. Think about good things. But the first line of this verse is, "Fix your thoughts on what is true." So the truth is the first thing we must do, and the truth isn't always easy. It's not always pretty. The full verse of Revelation 13:7 tells us something that I didn't mention before. The full verse says, "The beast was allowed to wage war on God's holy people and to conquer them." That's the hard pill to swallow. Now, we do know that in the end of it all, at the very end, Jesus has the victory. The word tells us that after it's all said and done, Jesus will be victorious. And we as Christians, we follow the advice of Philippians 4:8, and we think about that victory. We think about good, positive things. But we must know the truth, and we must be aware that the Word of God tells us that this global governance is able or allowed to conquer the saints. It wins that battle. So how does this global governance win this war? Ephesians 6:12 tells us, "For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in this dark world, and against evil spirits in the heavenly places." Joyce Meyer is an evangelist who wrote a very famous book, probably her most famous book, which was called The Battlefield of the Mind. And in this book, she explains how all the negative emotions that we feel, anger, betrayal, bitterness, envy, jealousy, and depression, these are all a battle in our minds for our mind, our emotions, our opinions, our feelings, and our viewpoints. It's kind of like this.
There's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. All I'm offering is the truth. Nothing more.
Now, the big picture of warfare, back in the Stone Age, when we went to war, we used clubs and spears. And then during the Bronze Age, we used shields and swords and daggers. Then during the Iron Age, those swords and those daggers became much stronger, much sharper. And then came the Industrial Age. We used rifles and bombs and planes. And during the warfare, especially during the Industrial Age, as we became more and more evolved in our warfare, whoever controlled the weapons won the war. Whoever had superior weapons won the war. If we had superior bombs, we won the war. If we had superior planes, we won the war. But now we're in the information age. So now the superior weaponry will be the control of information. The enemy understands that in order to win this new war, it must take control of information. It must have a superior way of disseminating information to Christians in order to win the war against Christians. The ultimate goal of the global governance is to enslave us physically. But long before it does that, it will enslave us mentally. It's not only a war for our opinions and our beliefs, our points of view, and our emotions. It's a war for what we think is good and what we think is bad. What is a good idea? What is a bad idea? What's a good system? What's a bad system? It also, and very importantly, it tries to deceive us in in who we believe is righteous and who we believe is evil. So every war has specific fronts or battles that it must win in order to move forward. For instance, the very famous battle on the beach of Normandy, on the Omaha beach in Normandy. We had to win that battle in order to get to Paris. And we had to win that battle in order to take control of the English Channel. And this is true of the war that's being waged against Christians right now. First, the enemy must shape our opinions. then the enemy must shape our beliefs. Then the enemy must shape our emotions. Once the enemy has been able to shape our emotions and our feelings, it shapes our behaviors. Since this battlefield begins in the deception of our opinions and our emotions, long before the war looks like this.
This is where we hold them! This is where we fight!
It will look like this.
Abortions wouldn't be happening if women could keep themselves from getting pregnant when they didn't want to.
I tell you what it is. It's chastity.
Yo, bagpipes!
Chastity.
Shut up!
Purity.
Okay, that was a little bit excessive.
You're a fascist. I have no time for you.
I need to get out of here. Why? Seriously, because nobody likes you here.
Get out of here. No one wants to hear what you have to say now. No one here wants to hear what you have to say. I'm going to stand here until you move.
Jesus was speaking to a large crowd on the Mount of Olives. And in this sermon he was giving, he was talking about the end of time. He was talking about this war that's being waged. And Jesus warned us in this message that even the Christians will be deceived by the false saviors in this battle. Since we know the global governance will conquer the saints, and Jesus told us that they will even deceive Christians, we know the beast will win the war for the opinions, the emotions, the attitudes, and even the support of Christians. So the big question is how? How could this possibly happen? Psalm 1:1 tells us, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the ungodly." Counsel means advice. Revelation 13 tells us the global governance, consisting of several different entities, is given the authority to rule over everyone. The definition of authority is the power to influence or command thought, opinion, or behavior. The definition of influence is the power or capacity of causing an effect in indirect or intangible ways. Another definition is the act or power of producing an effect without any apparent exertion of force or direct exercise of command. So Psalm 1:1 and Revelation 13 are connected in this battlefield. Revelation and Matthew tell us the what. The global governance has complete authority. The global governance conquers the saints. The global governance deceives Christians. The how is in Psalm 1:1. We are not to be influenced in indirect or intangible ways by the anti-Christian entities, because by definition, we are giving those entities the authority to control our emotions and behaviors for a certain effect without any command or any use of force. So the conclusion of this episode is, stay on guard. Be aware. The war is waging as we speak. Who is influencing us in indirect or intangible ways? We are blessed if we don't take the advice of ungodly people, and we are blessed if we aren't influenced by ungodly people. So pray, meditate on His Word day and night. Understand that the spiritual realm behind the curtain is battling for our minds, our opinions, our emotions, and our behaviors. God bless you, and stay tuned for the next episode of Practical Prophecy.